بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد المرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحابته أجمعين وبعد. Inshallah ta'ala, today's class is going to be audio only, not video, inshallah. Nas'alullah subhanahu wa ta'ala tawfiq wa sadad. Here we stopped at where the author speaks about awqat al-nahy. And awqat al-nahy is referring to the times that prayer is prohibited. What does that mean, that prayer is prohibited? It means that these are the times that I cannot voluntarily pray in. That's essentially what this is actually referring to. It's not referring to an idea where no prayer is allowed altogether, but rather it is speaking about what? It is speaking about the fact that you cannot voluntarily pray. However, there are certain types of prayers that would also be included in this hukm, in this verdict, in this ruling, and that's what we are going to be discovering today. But first, let's read over what he tells us. He says, yukrahu tahriman. I want you to pay attention here because in a few areas throughout the Shafi'i works, you will see that they utilize the term karaha and they mean tahrim. Or they might use karaha and they mean irshad. And they might use karaha and they mean something else. But many people are under this impression that the Shafi'iyya do not do this. Meaning we do not utilize karaha in the same way that the Ahnaf use karaha and tahrim. The way that they break it down normally is that if there's something explicit, they'll use stronger language. If it's something that's not explicit, then they'll use things that are what? That are lesser in stating the prohibition. Tamam? So, the author here is saying yukrahu tahriman for a purpose. What's the purpose? Is that some of the ulama from our ashab said no, it's tanzihan. And tanzih is very, very close to khilaf al-awla, meaning that this is something that, it does not make sense to do right now. And that's what tanzih would be, and that's similar to khilaf al-awla. You'll see the ulama will say, is it makruh or is it khilaf al-awla? And what they mean by this is that, is it something that can be a certain level of blameworthy, or is it just something that we ought to not do? And that's really the true difference between them. Tamam? Now, what does this mean? This means that certain prayers, because it is haram to pray here, that even if a person does it, it would be what? The prayer itself would not be valid. It would not be recognized. You could not say, oh, fulan is praying. That is not a prayer. It does not even initiate. Not only that, the person is sinful. The person is what? Sinful. Okay, well, what if we say it's only tanzih and it's not tahrim? Most of the ulama, they say it's tanzih. They'll say it's still not established. The person is sinful, but his sin is not, it's not really that major. Again, this is only certain what? Certain prayers. So what's the difference between karahat tahrim and karahat tanzih? Tahrim is definitely the person is sinful. Tanzih, they're not necessarily not sinful, but we can't say that they are definitely earning a sin. Tamam? Some people then will come and ask, well, what's the difference between karaha tahrimiyya, something that's disliked and it's haram, and haram? Well, they're both sinful, right? They both make the one that is doing it earn sins, bad deeds. Tamam? Although They said that the karaha tahrimiyya, its evidence requires thought. Requires thought. It's not always that clear. The understanding might be there, but is it because there's a hurma to it, or is it just something disliked, or what level is it? That's a matter that requires some mental processes in order to determine this. Versus haram, which you don't even need thought. It's a fact. It's done. Tamam? طيب. He says, صلاة لا سبب لها. Salah with no sabab. A salah with no sabab. Okay, well, what does this mean? What does it mean for there to be a salah with a sabab? What is sabab? The ulama, they said there's three types of sabab. Sabab means reason, a cause. Something that is making you do something. Tamam? They said there's three. The first type of sabab is called al-asbab al-mutaqaddimah. Al-asbab al-mutaqaddimah. Meaning the reason for why you are doing it precedes you doing it. Like what? Like making up obligatory prayers, or even making up sunnah prayers. Both of those prayers you are making up because the reason for the prayer, what brought it to you, happened prior to you doing it. What's another example for this? The sunnah of wudu. The sunnah of wudu is because you just finished making wudu. So its reason why you would be praying sunnah al-wudu is because you just made wudu. What about tahiyyat al-masjid? That's also from the asbab that are mutaqaddimah. They precede you praying it because you've already entered the masjid. So now that you have entered, the act itself comes after the fact. They also said what? The 2 rak'ah of what? Of tawaf. Because they come after you finish the tawaf. What about kusuf? Kusuf is one of the ones they differed on. Why? What's kusuf? It's solar and lunar eclipse. Because technically the way that it works, today it's a little bit different, right? Today we know a week in advance there's going to be an eclipse, so therefore we plan it accordingly, right? Back in the old days, you would have to see the eclipse and then start praying. So the reason for you praying it, it's because you just saw it. So Ibn Hajar, he said what? He says this is from the asbab al-mutaqaddimah. This is from the reasons that come before you actually pray. Al-Imam al-Ramli said no. This is not from the mutaqaddimah. This is from the ones that are in conjunction. What does in conjunction mean? That's the second type of asbab. Prayers where the reason for the prayer is present at the same exact time that you're going to pray. Most prayers, none of them happen this way. The bulk majority, they don't happen this way. Tamam? Therefore, this would be the only prayer that happened in conjunction if we agree with Ramli. If we agree with Ibn Hajar, then it is from the prayer of the eclipse is from the prayers that the reason for it precedes you actually doing it. Then there's a third category. And the third category is prayers that the reason why you are praying them is due to something that will happen in the near future. That could be like istikhara. That could be like the 2 rak'ah of ihram, because you're originally doing ihram to do hajj or umrah. So the reason for the 2 rak'ah still has yet to come. So if you've been to hajj or umrah and say you're doing multiple umrahs and then you went to Masjid Aisha, for example, to do your 2 rak'ah of ihram, why are you doing it? Because you want to go back to the haram, right? So the reason is coming afterwards. 2 rak'ah for leaving your home. Well, you're still in the home, so the reason is yet to come. So now we know asbabul salah, the reasons for prayer. Now that we've understood that, let's read what he says. He says it is makruh tahriman to pray a prayer that has no reason. كالنفل المطلق, like I just feel like getting up and praying 2 rak'ah. Mumtaz. This prayer would be unlawful in these times that we have yet to discuss. We're going to discuss them in a minute. He says, وَمِنْهُ صَلَاةُ التَّسَابِيحِ. Salat al-tasabih, the 4 rak'ah where you're saying tasbih in each rak'ah, right? That would be what? Nafl mutlaq. That would be a completely voluntary, I just feel like doing it. Mumtaz. He says, أَوْ لَهَا سَبَبٌ مُتْأَخِرٌ, also prohibited, things without a reason. I already spoke about things that have a reason. Now he's going to say also what is prohibited, things without a reason, and also things with a delayed reason that happen after you pray, like the 2 rak'ah of istikhara or ihram. Tamam? And now he's going to mention the times. Before we read the times, we need to understand something very important. They always mention a total of 5 times. Okay? But 2 of those things, or 4 of them, afwan, merge into one another. They do what? They merge into one another. But I take them apart so I can expand them to other things. Let's walk through them. He says, بعد أداء صبح حتى ترتفع الشمس كرمح. After praying subh until the sun rises, the length of a spear. What does that mean? That means if I were to stand in an open field and I'm watching the sun rise over the horizon, the amount that it has risen is that of if I were to have a spear in the ground up and I'm using it standing a little bit far away to measure the ascent of the what, or the ascent of the sun, which is approximately 15 to 20 minutes, just depending on where you are in the world. It might increase and it might decrease. This one right here, the author mentions it all in one big package. Some ulama will say it is after you pray subh and then after subh until the sun rises. Why do they do that? Because if you wake up late and the sun has not reached the spear, but you have not prayed subh yet, technically the time is prohibited. Do you pray subh or do you wait? You pray subh. Why? Because it's not one of the prayers that you are not allowed to pray. This is an obligatory prayer. So you're going to pray it. Then after you pray it, you should not be praying anything else, unless it's not part of the 2 categories that he mentioned that are prohibited to pray. Tamam? The second one, or the second 2. وَعَصْرٍ حَتَّى تَغْرُبْ. So if you prayed Asr, from the moment that you finish praying until Maghrib comes in, you should not be praying anything from those 2 categories and types of prayers. Completely voluntary, things that have a delayed what? A delayed reason that come in after you pray. You should not be praying those after Asr. Whenever you pray it, and after Asr in general. Tamam? Tamam. So those two right there that he mentioned, some ulama will break that down into, they'll divide it into when you do it and also within the time. So if you go back to our group in Telegram and you open up, here, let me see, I can just do it this way real quick. You'll see there's a file that I uploaded and I called it what? Or it's called An-Nahr al-Jari. And if you read Arabic and you're able to read through it, if you're not, don't worry about it. And if you scroll down to page, Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad, this is, okay, let me see, let me just do this. This is better. And I'm just opening up the file. You can do the same thing. I just want to give you the page so you can see it and compare. This is where Nahl al-Jari comes in as a good reference point. Page 52. So you'll see that in Al-Mukhtasar al-Saghir, he mentions 5 times. In Safinat al-Najah, he mentions what? He mentions 5 times. And in Abi Shuja, he mentions 5 times. But the author here is mentioning 3. Al-Mukhtasar al-Saghir, what did he say? عند طلوع الشمس حتى ترتفع قدر رمح. From when the sun begins to rise until it rises the length of a spear. But then shortly after that he says what? And after you pray subh until the sun arises completely. So what are you seeing here? You're seeing that they're breaking it down from those 2 aspects. In Safit al-Najah he says the same thing. In Matn Abi Shuja he says the same thing. So with the Nahr al-Jari, you are able to compare and contrast how they are wording these things between several different Shafi'i works. Safinat al-Salah, the Sittin by Ahmad al-Zahid, the Egyptian scholar, Al-Risala al-Jami'a by Ahmad bin Zayn al-Hibshi, Mukhtasar al-Saghir by Imam Bafadl, Safinat al-Najah by Imam Salim ibn Samir al-Hadrami, and Ghayat al-Ikhtisar min Matn Abi Shuja by Imam Abi Shuja. Having that next to you while you're studying will definitely give you an upper hand in your studies and knowing exactly how things were expressed and what was meant, inshaAllah ta'ala. نسأل الله لنا ولكم التوفيق. He says, وَعِنْدَ اسْتِوَاءِ غَيْرِ يَوْمِ الْجُمْعَةِ. What's the istiwa? The sun being in the zenith. And when it comes off of the istiwa, what is it called? It's called zawal. It's called zawal. Tamam? So if the sun is in istiwa, do I pray dhuhr? No, because that is right before the time of dhuhr. So I'm not going to pray dhuhr. However, yawm al-jum'ah, I can start a little bit early with the khutbah and all of that, because it's only a few minutes, and by the time the khutbah is said, there will be time for me to go ahead and pray. Why can I do that? Why is this allowed? Because of the heat. Al-ibradu بالظهر. تمام. قال لا ما له سبب متقدم. Not prayers that their reason precedes me doing the prayer. He says كركعتي وضوء, like the 2 rak'ah of wudu. وتحية. Yeah, we already went over all of this, right? وتحية. And tawaf. He also mentions tawaf in some of the copies. Not all the copies have tawaf. Some of them do. وَتَحِيَّةٌ وَكُسُوفٍ. Well, we already said that according to Ibn Hajar, tamam, the kusuf, its sabab is mutaqaddim. However, Al-Ramli says what? He says that it is fil hal. It's not mutaqaddim. Tamam? Tamam. طيب. هنا مسألة. What if I prayed the prayer? خلاص, I'm done. Then there was a jama'ah. Can I pray, tamam, with that jama'ah? The fuqaha, they said, well, hold on. Did you already pray in a jama'ah? Say yes. Then why are you praying in another jama'ah? They'll say, no, you can't pray it again in the jama'ah because you already did it. Tamam. So this would be what? La sabab. But what if the second jama'ah is better? Or they missed the jama'ah when they prayed it the first time altogether. Khalas. La ishkal. Then they can pray with it. Okay, well what if his first prayer, his first jama'ah was fine, but the second jama'ah, tamam, there's another person and he just really wants to do jama'ah and he really wants the reward. They said, fine, if he really wants the reward, then he can do it. So it's all going to go back to the reason. It's all going to go back to what? The reason. If the person is just doing it just to do it, we're going to tell them, no, you can't do that. If the person is going to do it and he has a legitimate reason to do it, then we'll say you can because it's part of that prayer that has already come in. Tamam? And then they differed, like, well, say I already prayed Asr, but I was still at the masjid reading some Quran waiting for Maghrib. And I already prayed Asr in Jama'ah and a brother comes in and he wants to pray. Can I do it as a nafl mutlaq? هذا مشكل. This is a problem. Based upon the qawa'id, no, you cannot. You cannot do this. It's after Asr. You already prayed Asr. You can't do nafl mutlaq. Tamam. But the way to fix this is to say what? I'm doing this to get extra rewards for my Asr. And most ulama, they'll say, okay, even though per the qawa'id, this seems like you're just playing around with the rules, they'll still allow it. They will still what? They will still allow it. Wallah knows best. He says, وَصَلَاةِ جَنَازَةٍ وَلَوْ عَلَى غَائِبٍ. Salatul janazah, the person is already dead, right? That's why we pray Salatul janazah. We don't pray that before a person dies. I mean, someone could, but that would be wrong. It wouldn't have any real value. Therefore, it would not be acceptable. He says, وَإِعَادَةٍ مَعَ جَمَاعَةٍ وَلَوْ إِمَامًا, and we already went over that. وَكِفَايَتِهِ أو وكفاءته فرض أو نفل لم يقصد تأخيرها للوقت المكروه ليقضيه فيه أو يداوم عليه. Meaning what he's trying to say here is that the individual, we're allowing him to pray with the congregation because this is not something intentional. Tamam. He does not mean or intend to do this on a regular basis. It's something that happened in an occasion. And the list, actually, this concept applies to everything. Meaning, someone that comes after us and he's already prayed Asr, he's done. He goes and he makes wudu. And then prays 2 rak'ah. And he does this every single day. No, this is a problem. Why is it a problem? Because you know that this was a time that you weren't supposed to be praying in. Now it is almost as if you are challenging Allah's law, Allah's rule. Tamam. And this is why I say, أو يداوم عليه, or he's consistently doing it. Right? هذا الكلام what? هذا الكلام فيه إشكال. فيه إشكال. Meaning the behavior of that person is problematic. Even though we're saying that these other prayers are allowed, even making up missed obligatory prayers are allowed. But if a person is consistently picking this time to do it in, يعني فيه مشكلة. This is a problem. This is a problem. نسأل الله سبحانه وتعالى العفو والعافية. Every once in a while, or someone has a lot of prayers to make up, for example, that's fine. That's fine. Some people, of course, will come and say the Prophet ﷺ prayed after Asr. Okay, first of all, he was doing a qada. The Prophet ﷺ was doing a qada. That's one. Two, the Prophet ﷺ gave the prohibition to us, but he might do otherwise because that he might have a command on him. That is what Imam al-Zarkashi stated, and even what Ibn Hajar stated, and what Imam al-Nawawi stated in Majmu'. Tamam. So, again, that was a qada that he was doing. Its reason preceded his act. He has exceptions to how he prays different than us. Like he had, his prayer at night was all an obligation upon him. It wasn't an obligation upon us. So he has things that he might do that are uniquely his. But his command to us stands and still stands till today. He says, فَلَوْ تَحَرَّ إِيقَاعِ صَلَاةٍ غَيْرِ صَاحِبَةِ الْوَقْتِ فِي الْوَقْتِ الْمَكْرُوهِ مِنْ حَيْثُ كَوْنُهُ مَكْرُوهًا فَتَحْرُمُ مُطْلَقًا. If a person, he's seeking these prohibited times deliberately, on a regular basis, to pray prayers in it. Tamam. Why is he doing that? Because he wants to pray. Look what he says. He says, غَيْرِ صَاحِبَةِ الْوَقْتِ. Meaning it's not the prayer of the time, nor was there a necessity like a person that has a lot of prayers to make up, for example. No, he's praying us, and then he's like saying, okay, well, let me go make wudu and pray. And he's doing this every single day. La, this is called mu'anada lil-shara'. This is called waging war against the sharia. That prayer for him would be haram. That prayer for him would be haram. There's actually a hadith from the Prophet ﷺ. He said, do not seek to pray, meaning extra or more, when the sun is rising and when the sun is setting. So there's direct statements that prohibit this. Tamam. Some of the ulama argued, would the person be a kafir for doing this? Now you might say, whoa, that's going pretty far. Hold on though. Hold on. The Ibn Hajar in Al-I'lam biqati' al-Islam, which is a book all speaking about the rules of takfir, if that is something that you need to brush up on and study, then I recommend studying and reading through Al-I'lam biqati' al-Islam. And it shows the Shafi'i stance on all forms of takfir. Tamam? He says, if you say to a person, trim your nails, it is sunnah, and the person says, I'm not going to do it and I don't care about the sunnah. The Shafi'iyah, they argue that the person has committed an act of riddah. Why? Because he's waging war against the sharia. But what about this person that is praying in this time, even though the sharia says no? Do we automatically say takfir? No, we don't. Because, and the difference between the two, you can't say this is a nadhir to this one. What's nadhir? We covered this in previous classes, right? So scenarios that are similar and therefore would take the same ruling. You can't say that these two scenarios are nadha'ir. Why? Because in the example of the one praying, we didn't say a word to him yet. He just had a habit. He might not even know the timing. But the guy with the trimming of the nails, however, he was spoken to and he deliberately said no. Okay, now let's change the scenario then and make it equivalent. The person makes wudu every day after Asr to pray 2 rak'ah afterwards. And he does this every single day. And we say, Akhi, this is what you're doing is not acceptable. He says, why? We say, because this time is prohibited to pray in. He says, I don't care. You say, Ya Akhi al-Kareem, this is what the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam said. He says, I don't care, no one's going to hold me back from my Lord. Then you can have that argument of what? Of takfir. But still, takfir, this is for a qadi. This is not for you and I. When one of us becomes a qadi one day, then they can bring up that discussion with the people in their masjid and go after them if they wanted to. Tamam. And of course he says, فَلَوْ تَحَرَّى, the person is seeking that time. But if a person isn't seeking that time, it's not something that he necessarily does that way on a regular basis. It's not the same. He says خامسها الاستقبال. الاستقبال, it means to face the Qibla. The Shafi'iyya make istiqbal from the conditions. Why? Because as you know, a condition is something not connected to the essence of an act, but must be present throughout it or whenever that condition needs to be fulfilled. That's a condition. It's خارج عن ماهية الشيء. It's outside the essence of something. But in prayer, we stand facing the Qibla, right? How can it be outside of the essence? Because you start the standing before you do the takbir. Since you need to maintain istiqbal from beginning to end, this necessitates that you start your istiqbal before the takbir. Like you do your wudu before you enter the prayer. It's the same thing here. Tamam? Now, he says, istiqbalu ayn al-qibla. What's ayn al-qibla? The exact qibla. Well, I don't know the exact qibla. I'm in Florida. How do I know the exact qibla? Well, back in the old days, they used geometry to tell. When there was a compass, then they based their geometry and directions based upon the compasses. And today we use abs. Are they allowed? Yes. However, if you have ilm in this, like with the times of prayer, this is something you should investigate and assert to a certain level of certainty for you. Tamam? Well, this begs the next question. Is the earth flat or round? On this, I cannot answer you because I'm not an astronaut and I'm not a scientist. Mainstream scientists say it is round. A minority of scientists say that no, it's not round, it's flat. And realistically, the first one doesn't even say it's round, they say it's more like a pear-shaped, oval shape / pear shape. So, based upon your research, if you're doing this on your own, you have to follow one of the two. Because it will change your direction. Tamam? And it will change how you determine the direction. طيب, how am I supposed to do this ijtihad? And I don't know. Here we're going to say you can follow the people of what? Of ijtihad. The people of ijtihad, the people that you trust. Well, if I believe it's round, am I sinful? Because NASA said it? No, you're not sinful. Okay. If I say it's flat, am I sinful because the scientists that I trust say that it's flat? Am I sinful? No, you're not sinful. Because unless you went up there and saw it, then it becomes dhanni and ijtihadi. Right? Right. It's that simple. This is why when we see people arguing, is the earth round, earth flat? Usually I say to them, well, have you been up there? No. Have you been up there? No. So, in essence, it renders both of their arguments dhanni. This one might be right, and that one might be right. Allah knows best. Then what do? You follow those that you believe are right. Whether it's the ones that believe it's round or the ones that believe it's flat. So believing it's flat is an okay statement. Both are ijtihadi matters. Tamam. So from the Sharia standpoint, the Sharia is indifferent. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not assert a shape and tell you if you don't believe it, you're a kafir. No. So khalas, la ba's. And there's no reason to carry around grievances about it. If you believe 100% that it's round, mashallah, mubarak alayk. Don't know what to tell you. If the other person believes 100% that's flat, mubarak alayk. I don't know what to tell you. I mean, the discussion ends there. That's like us arguing on the atmosphere of Mars, or actually arguing that if there is Mars altogether. I'm pretty sure many of you are aware of these discussions. It's all dhanniyat. It's all dhanniyat. Oh, but they sent back pictures. It does not make it qat'i. Pictures does not make it qat'i. Videos does not make it qat'i. Tamam? These things do not make it qat'i. So, as a student of knowledge, you should always be what? Go back to the usul. We have things that are dhanni, speculation, assumption based, and things that are qat'i. Things that everyone has to agree on by necessity. There's no way around it. Tamam? If a matter is proven dhanniyan, that's okay to follow it, but you need to remember that it's dhanni. It's that simple. خلاص قضية سهلة جدا. And we don't have to go to war with one another over if the moon is shaped like a rectangle or hexagon. Doesn't matter. It does not matter. Our salvation is not based on that. Tamam? طيب. He says, عين القبلة, the exact qibla. طيب. How do I do it without an ab? How do I follow it without an ab? The ulama, in the old days, as I said, they followed different systems. One system was just common sense. If I'm in Egypt, I know where the qibla is. Tamam. Then they started to use Bayt al-Ibra, busla, compass. You pinpoint north, and then you compensate for that depending on where true north is. Tamam. The ulama said that if you have masajid and communities established with a mihrab, you should not differ from your community. You should not differ from your community. So, for example, when we see in America, certain groups come and say, oh no, y'all are praying northeast and this is wrong, it should be southeast. We follow the community. But what if your personal investigation leads you to that it's southeast? Keep it to yourself. Tamam? Keep it to yourself. One of the ways that they used to follow in Egypt and other locations like Iraq and Yemen and Shem is that they would keep the northern star behind the left ear. And in Iraq, they would keep the northern star behind the right ear. And so on. So they had these mechanisms and methods to follow. Some followed the sunrise as an indicator. Some followed the moon movements as an indicator. Tamam? If there's no one in your local community that does ijtihad, or there's no means for you to do ijtihad, then you start what? Then you start following the tools in order to make the determination. Tamam? And the ulama said, they'll say there's 4 levels of ijtihad. You doing it yourself, you being told by someone, you following secondary signs that give you the indication, or someone is showing you their study of how they figured it out and you're following it. تمام؟ تمام. قال أي الكعبة بالصدر, facing the Kaaba with your chest. And the reason why they say chest is so that way your body is facing it. Your body is what? Is facing it. Facing what? Facing the Kaaba. Kaaba al-Musharrafa. Mumtaz? He says, فلا يكفي استقبال جهتها خلافا لأبي حنيفة. الإمام Abu Hanifa رضي الله تعالى عنه, he views that you can face its general direction. تمام. قال إلا في حق العاجز عنه, except for the one that is unable to face it. Like whom? Like someone that's sick and can't move. تمام. Or someone that is crippled and they can't adjust their position. تمام. Or someone that is chained down or tied down, and so on. تمام. قال وفي صلاة شدة خوف, and similarly, basically, the person that's in صلاة شدة الخوف, and that's usually done on the battlefield, and can be done outside the battlefield. تمام. Like if there's a flood, or you're afraid for your life, and you're in a place, and the move that you make might be your end. قال ولو فرضا, even if the prayer that you're praying during شدة الخوف is what is an obligatory prayer. قال فيصلي كيف أمكن, you pray however you are, however you can. ماشيا وراكبا, whether you're walking or you're riding something. مستقبلا ومستدبرا لها, whether you're facing the Qibla or you're giving your back to the Qibla or giving it your right or giving it your left, it's not going to matter. Tamam? It's not going to what? It's not going to matter. قال كهارب من حريق وسيل وسبع وحية, like a person fleeing from a fire or a flood, or a sabr, like a lion, a tiger, a cheetah that's hunting them, it's waiting for them. وحية, snake, or snakes, could be more than one. ومن داء عند إعسار وخوف حبس, or you're hiding away from someone because you owe them money, or you're hiding from people that are trying to lock you up, and you're hiding, and the prayer time comes in, you're going to pray. Even though you're looking out of the cracks and trying to hide out from these people. لا بأس. No, you're going to pray. However you are. Why? Because of the situation. Because of the situation that you are in. وإلا في نفل سفر مباح. If you're a traveler, and this travel is mubah, is allowed, and you want to pray a sunnah prayer, not an obligatory prayer, not a prayer that's manzur, meaning you gave an oath to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to pray 2 rak'ah for you to finish something during your travel, and you're riding, you're like, oh, well, let me pray it while I'm riding the bus. No, you have to face the qibla. He says, لِقَاصِدِ مَحَلٍ مُعَيَّنٍ. نعم, this qaid really is connected back to what? Safar mubah. Because in order for it to be mubah, you can't be a ha'im. We'll learn about this in the rulings of the prayers of the traveler. You see, first, in order for you to be able to pray and use any of the licenses while traveling, your travel needs to be mubah. And from one of the conditions of it being mubah is that you're not a ha'im. You're not a person traveling without a destination in mind. No, you're just traveling. Wherever the wind takes you, you go. This travel, it's still considered allowed, but it's not by definition mubah. Okay, so look at mubah not as in mubah as in allowed in the sharia. Look as in mubah as a name we are giving to it. Tamam? Because you're allowed. You know what? I'm just going to hop into my car and drive. And wherever the gas tank ends, I end. You're allowed to do that. Of course, it doesn't make sense, but you're allowed to do it. Okay? But because you have no destination in mind, it could be 1,000 miles until your gas tank gives out. You're not allowed to use the licenses. So think of the word mubah as more of a name that's referring to a travel that has or contains all of the rules for the time being. Tamam? فيجوز النفل راكبا وماشيا فيه ولو قصيرا. Qasir is what? We'll learn this once we get to the prayers or the praying of the traveler, is that you have safar tawil and you have safar qasir. The tawil is the marhaltin. It is the two journeys or the two trips. Qasir is anything less than that. Well, what is the two trips and journeys according to modern calculations? My Sheikh Salim al-Khatib, Allah yahfadhu, based upon his investigation, it would be 75 kilometers. We're going to speak about this more in the prayer of the traveler, but for now, 75 what? Kilometers. I have a habit of rounding that up to 50 miles, if you use miles. But our Shaykh Abdul Aziz Shahawi, Allah yahfadhu, you'll say 128 kilometers. When we get to the chapter of, or the section of the prayer of the traveler, I'll explain what that calculation came from and what caused it. Tamam? Wallahu a'lam. He says, نعم يشترط أن يكون مقصده على مسافة لا يسمع النداء من بلده بالشروط المقررة في الجمعة. This is one of the amazing things about Fath al Mu'een. When he's speaking about a mas'alah, he does not allow any qaid or harf or shart pass by without explaining it to you. You see, if we were to go to, let me pull up real quick, An-Nahr al-Jariyah, still have it open right here for us, and I were to scroll down, and remember earlier I gave you a page and we went over that. So if you wanted to reference it one more time, I have it right here in front of me. That's page what? 53. So you can write that down in your notes. I sent it, it's in the Word document, it's in the group. Now, if we go here, I believe there should be istiqbal. Oh, maybe none of them covered istiqbal. No, I thought they did. Let me see. No, there's no istiqbal here. No istiqbal here. لا بأس. I'll say لا بأس. Yeah, they don't have any istiqbal here. Not down here? No, not in the shurut afterwards. You know what? Then خلاص. What I'll just I'll reference just for the sake of having a reference right now would be Allahumma salli sayyidina Muhammad. Minhaj. In Minhaj al-Talibin, what does he say? استقبال القبلة شرط لصلاة القادر إلا في شدة الخوف ونفل السفر. Okay, if we go over that whole section on istiqbal, he doesn't mention this point right here. Why? Why doesn't he mention this point right here that we just read? نعم يشترط أن يكون مقصده على مسافة لا يسمع النداء من بلده بالشروط المقررة في الجمعة. What does this mean? That distance that you're going to travel, that short distance, can't be a distance that would still allow you to hear the call for Jum'ah from your town that you're from. Why? Because if you hear the call from your town, then you're obligated to go for Jum'ah. You're obligated to go for Jum'ah. Then all of this doesn't apply. This whole thing about leaving the Qibla. You need to go for Jum'ah. You don't get to stop and pray where you are. This is a qaid. So we have some things in our fiqh books called shurut, huruf, and quyud. A shart is a condition added in. A harf is a letter added in that helps specify the scenario. A qaid is a restriction added into the surah that helps you understand the totality of the surah meaning the scenario. Al-Millibari radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, he tries to give you every qaid, every harf, every shart along the way. So you don't need to think about it. So here what does he say? But if you go that short distance, you can't be in a distance where you can hear the call for Jum'ah. Because if you hear the call for Jum'ah, then you need to go back. And he says it's the conditions that are mentioned in the section of Jum'ah. We didn't get to it yet. It will be understood once we cover it, but just until then, now you see what? Now you see this qaid right here. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Mumtaz. هذا ممتاز. But if we go back to Minhaj al-Talibin, he doesn't say any of that. استقبال القبلة شرط لصلاة القادر إلى في شدة الخوف ونفل السفر فللمسافر التنفل راكبا وماشيا ولا يشترط طول سفره على المشهور فإن أمكن استقبال الراكب في مركد. You go through the whole entire section and he does not mention, has 3 pauses in that section. It's right before Bab Sifat al-Salah. If you review it, you'll realize he doesn't mention this point that we just covered at all. طيب. Why not? Because it's a mukhtasar. This is a sharh. So this is why here he's going to what? He's going to focus on mentioning it for you so that way you have it and you know it. And that way you have the full detail. Jazakumullah khair jazaa wal ihsan. Our ulama were really caring for our understanding. Jazahumullah khair jazaa wal ihsan. He says, وَخَرَجَ بِالْمُبَاحِ سَفَرُ الْمَعْصِيَةِ. Now the opposite of mubah is normally what? Ma'asiyah. All travel that's ma'asiyah is what? It blocks you from fulfilling any of the rukhas. What are the rukhas? The rukhas are the licenses that I am allowed to use. So when I'm traveling, I can shorten my prayer. I might be able to not have to face the qibla in an obligatory, in a sunnah prayer, right? So this is the licenses that I get as a traveler. But if my travel was travel of ma'asiyah, then I'm not allowed. Bear in mind. The fuqaha from our ashab, they will divide the matter as follows. The travel could be mubah, but you sin in it, and that's called al-ma'asiyah fi safar. Sinning within the mubah travel. That does not block you from the licenses. Then there's a travel. The travel itself in its entirety is what is prohibited. Like I'm traveling to go gamble. The safar as a whole is unlawful, and therefore I am not allowed to use any of the rukhas. No rukhsas allowed. But say I'm halfway there. I'm flying to where do they go to gamble in America? To Atlantic City or Las Vegas, right? And while the plane is in the air, and I say, no, haram, I can't do this. I am not going to do this act. Alhamdulillah, this is beautiful. From the moment that the niyyah changed, the individual can start using the licenses of what? Of traveling. And we'll see more of that, inshallah ta'ala, in the section of travel. فَلَا يَجُوزُ تَرْكُ الْقِبْلَةِ في النفل لآبق. What's an abiq? Is a runaway slave. His whole travel would be considered what? Unlawful. ومسافر عليه دين حال قادر عليه. Or someone traveling who is in debt and is able to pay his debt and it's due right now. His travel is not lawful unless he gets permission from the one that he owes that money to. وَيَجِبُ عَلَى مَاشٍ إِتْمَامُ رُكُوعٍ وَسُجُودٍ. Now if a person is praying while they are walking, they have to fulfill what? Their ruku' and their sujood. Meaning they have to go all the way down for ruku', all the way down for sujood. لِسُهُولَةِ ذَلِكَ عَلَيْهِ. Because such is what it's easy for him to do. Because he's already standing on the ground. Tamam? He's already standing on the ground. فلا إشكال في ذلك. تمام. However, If he is traveling in a swamp or a place with excessive mud or snow, then due to the hardship, they can go a little bit down for ruku' and a little bit further for sujood. تمام؟ قال وعلى راكب إيماء بهما. And a person that is riding, like in a hawdaj, or in a car, or in a bus, they don't have to fulfill the ruku' and the sujood completely. They can simply tilt a little bit forward for ruku' and a little bit further for what? For sujood. وَاسْتِقْبَالٌ فِيهِمَا. And the person that is riding, they need to do istiqbal. This is easy for them. More easier than the one walking. Tamam. Why? Because he might be walking in the opposite direction. Tamam. But the person that's riding, like a hawdaj is the boxes that they used to put on top of camels, or a bus or a car, they can turn. Tamam. He says, وَجُلُوسٍ بَيْنَ السَّجْدَتَيْنِ فَلَا يَمْشِي إِلَّا فِي الْقِيَامِ وَالْاعْتِدَالِ وَالتَّشَهُّدِ وَالسَّلَامِ. The person can remain walking while they're standing, while they're rising from ruku', they can walk. In tashahhud and in salam, they can all be standing as they're walking. But the person that's riding, he can twist and turn. So as long as he's sitting, khalas. He can do all of those things that require sitting, he can do them as he is sitting. Okay, there's another scenario that they put in our ashab, they mention and they speak about, and that is, what if a person is driving a boat? Now, a sailboat is a little bit difficult than modern day boats. So their example, their scenario is actually about sailboats. So with sailboats, they say, even though the person is a rakib, rider, this is difficult for him to be able to us to tell them he needs to sit down and do full ruku' and sujood. He might be standing, right? But he's also riding. So they said, if the person is in control of the boat and he is driving the boat and he needs to pray, they said he doesn't have to face the qibla. Some of our ashab said for takbirat al-ihram he faces the qibla, but then the rest of the prayer he focuses on driving his boat. Because if he doesn't, something bad could happen. Tamam? And this is what Ibn Hajar said in his sharh of al-Muqaddimah al-Hadramiyah. He says, وَيَحْرُمُ الْحِرَافُ عَنْ اسْتِقْبَالِ صَوْبِ مَقْصِدِهِ عَامِدًا عَالِمًا مُخْتَارًا إِلَّا إِلَى الْقِبْلَةِ. So the person walking, what he needs to do is that he's going to face what? He's going to face the qibla and do takbirat al-ihram. He's going to do what? Takbirat al-ihram. Then he's going to turn around and face his direction, and he's going to treat the direction that he's traveling in as if it is his qibla. As if it is his qibla during the prayer. So imagine a person who's walking, he turns, the qibla's to his back. He turns around and he does takbirat al-ihram, then he turns around and faces his path, and then continues what? He continues walking. Mumtaz. He's now going to treat the direction that he's going in as if it was his qibla. Therefore, twisting and turning from his path would be unlawful, be haram. It would be as if he is turning away from the Qibla itself. Tamam? He says, وَيُشْتَرَطُ تَرْكُ فِعْلٍ كَثِيرٍ كَعَدْوٍ وَتَحْرِيكِ رِجْلٍ بِلَا حَاجَةٍ وَتَرْكِ تَعَمُّدِ وَطْءِ نَجِسٍ وَلَوْ يَابِسًا وَإِنْ عَمَّ الطَّرِيقَ وَلَا يَضُرُّ وَطْء يَابِسٍ خَطَأً وَلَا يُكَلَّفُ مَاشٍ التَّحَفُّظُ عَنْهُ. Now, he's saying, and that person that's traveling while he's walking, he should not be doing a lot of acts like running or power walking or moving his legs in ways that are unsuitable for what he's actually doing. Does not do any of that. Should avoid any deliberate najasa that he sees, even if it's dry, but if he comes in contact with dry najasa, moves away from it immediately, then no foul done, no harm. Tamam. La ishkal. And we're not going to tell the person praying in this scenario that he needs to be on any excessive lookout for najasa. Tamam. We can't tell him to do that because we just told him not to make any weird movements. But it's a balance act. Meaning if he catches najasa in his, he notices it and he just avoids it with minimal movement. Tamam. ويجب الاستقبال في النفل لراكب سفينة غير ملاح. And facing the qibla in a recommended prayer, in a sunnah prayer, for one that's on the boat is wajib, except for what? The navigator, the one controlling and driving the boat. Tamam. Alright, well, what if someone, like in modern day ships, everything is done automatically now. The boat on its own pulls out and it follows the system. Is the navigator treated like the navigator of old? Yes? No? They'll go back to the hardship that's involved in their task and in their activity. And Allah knows best. And here we're going to pause, inshaAllah ta'ala, where he says, وَعْلَمْ أنه يشترط أيضا في صحة الصلاة العلم بفرضية الصلاة. Here we're going to do our waqf and we'll pause here. وأقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله تعالى لي ولكم فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.